Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, The Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now, in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence, with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Hello and welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm Bill Raker, your guest host for this episode of the program. Today we have a very interesting and very important topic. We're going to be talking about identity theft, what you need to know. And here to talk to us about that is Marty Fleischhacker, from the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Welcome, Marty.
Thank you, Bill, for having me on to talk about this important topic.
It is very important, and I think you have the background and the experience to be very informative and interesting to our audience as the Senior Financial Fraud Ombudsman and Civil Enforcement Liaison with the Department of Commerce. That sounds like it's 2 different hats. Can you tell us what each of those roles mean to you, Marty, and how they may relate to one another?
Sure. Commerce for over 22 years, and I'm the former Assistant Commissioner of the Division. And so there are civil investigators at Commerce, and there are 17 licensed police officers in the Enforcement Division. The last time I checked, the Commerce Fraud Bureau had a 100% conviction rate, and I still work with the enforcement team. So that's the liaison part when they request assistance. But primarily right now, as you know, Bill, the focus of my current position is preventing fraud. And that's fraud that affects Minnesotans. It's committed by family members and it's committed by strangers. I receive confidential reports from broker-dealers, financial advisors, banks, and credit unions when they suspect that their customer, who is either over 65 or is defined by Minnesota law as a vulnerable adult, being financially exploited. So once we receive those reports, we investigate the matter. We have the ability, according to Minnesota law, a law that was updated last year in August 2020, to put holds on funds or delay transactions when one of the people in one of those 2 groups is being financially exploited, or we can also contact a trusted person. You know, these are things that we only do in those rare circumstances or circumstances when we're out of other options, but the law does give us those opportunities to do those types of things. And I get numerous reports every month about financial exploitation and fraud happening here in Minnesota.
Well, thank you for that background, Marty. Marty's a return guest to Access to Democracy. He was previously on to talk with us about scams and frauds and how his role at the Department of Commerce interacts with those kinds of activities. And we discussed that a follow-on to that would be a great topic in ID theft. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode of the program. So Marty, identity theft that's a scary sounding phrase, as you might think of yourself becoming a victim of ID theft. But let's start by having you tell us what ID theft really is. How do you define it, and what different types of ID theft might there be?
That's a great question. Identity theft, or identity fraud, as some people call it, they're used to refer to many types of crimes involving someone wrongfully obtaining and using another person's information. And it's typically for economic gain. Basically, criminals use your identity in a deceptive way for their financial benefit. Identity theft can take different forms. Some examples of identity theft include account takeover, where someone will maybe change an address on your account if they have enough information, and then they'll proceed after a short period of time to drain all the funds out of your account. Or if they have your credit or credit card information, some other account information, they can use credit or debit cards and commit fraud. Online shopping fraud that way. They can, if they have your social security information, they can file for your taxes, commit tax fraud, or utility fraud. Put the utilities in your name instead of their name. A study by Javelin Strategy and Research found that about 1 in 20 people nationwide were affected by identity theft in 2019, and estimated losses were somewhere around $17 billion. That's up 13% from 2018. And as you know, Bill, the COVID pandemic has caused fear and confusion and other heightened emotions. And those strong emotions, coupled with the increase of use of the internet, where we're doing more of our shopping, has created the perfect environment for scammers to operate.
Well, there are hundreds of thousands or more of individuals that fall victim to identity theft every year. So how does one know that they've become a victim of ID theft?
Yep. There are many different ways it can, that it can happen. You may get billed for charges you didn't incur. That's something I hear a lot of times. People say, I got this bill and I didn't go there. Well, maybe somebody committed medical fraud and used your information for that. I once got a call from a credit card company of mine that my credit card was being used in London. Someone was buying movie tickets and tires, and I wasn't in London. And so, I don't know where they got my information, probably a skimmer at a gas pump or something like that, but I just signed an affidavit and said it wasn't me, and I didn't have to pay anything because I contacted my financial institution right away and told them that check out and see if there were charges too. So, several identity theft victims told me about accounts listed on their credit report. And these were accounts they didn't open, but they saw them when they checked their credit report. Recently, I've been contacted by a couple of Minnesota residents who received tax forms from other states for unemployment insurance benefits. And they were, being charged taxes for those benefits. And these are states where they've never worked, never lived, but somebody else got their information and made claims in their name. Each one had given their personal information, though, to scammers in the past who either used it or sold it to somebody who committed fraud with it. FTC data shows that government benefit fraud complaints were up 1,400% last year. So in 2020, 1,400%. Stimulus payments have been a goldmine for fraudsters. Besides unemployment insurance, fraudsters have also filed for other benefits like the Paycheck Protection Program. Romance scam victims in Minnesota have received the proceeds from some of those loans. I know, I've talked to them, and so people need to be careful also that they don't become, especially if you're in a romance with somebody you met online. That's where a lot of these proceeds from these different types of frauds are flowing through romance scam victims' accounts and to the scammers who make up stories about why the money's going to hit their account.
Well, many people do, and I know I do, Marty. I dread the thought of having my identity stolen stolen or captured and used fraudulently. So because of the consequences to me, the victim, what are some of the more devastating, frustrating kinds of consequences that a victim is very likely to suffer if they've had their ID stolen?
Well, I've talked to numerous victims, and a recent study found that over 60% of identity theft victims suffered emotionally from anxiety, stress, and fear about their financial security. Over 40% suffered physically from a loss of sleep and other things. Those are some of the things we don't think about. We think about, well, they're suffering financially, and that's true because their credit can be negatively affected. If somebody takes out loans or credit cards in your name and they're not paid back, a victim can lose money from an account or assets. If their account gets hacked, scammers use emails to trick people. I had one person here in Minnesota receive benefits from somebody who had their email hacked. And that person, once their email was hacked, a scammer, tricked their financial advisor to send money to a person's account in Minnesota, tens of thousands of dollars. And that's just, one other way that somebody got hacked in. They first took tens of thousands and they were going to take over 100,000 the next time around, but we stopped it. Luckily, working with a credit union in Minnesota, we were able to get the money back to that victim, but typically victims don't get their money back. The money is sliced and diced and often sent out of our country.
Well, how do the fraudsters, the crooks who are smart and relentless and very persuasive, how do they trick the victim into revealing to them the information that they then exploit and take advantage of the victim? How do they get that information?
Fraudsters are extremely creative, and the different ways that the different techniques they use or the schemes they engage in are really endless. But phishing is one way. They'll send you an email, they'll have you click on a link, or they'll ask you some information. You may get an email from a criminal that appears to be from Bank of America or wherever you're doing banking. I'm just using a name, or maybe Amazon or somebody else who purchased something recently from, and they'll say there's a problem with your account, or there's a problem with your delivery. We need you to verify your personal information, and people will put the information in the fill out whatever form or questionnaire they're given, and the emails look very convincing. I've seen them. I've gotten them, and it has your bank logo or it has Amazon's logo or whatever they're trying to mimic or impersonate. And so it's easy for people to fall victim to that. I know people myself, friends myself, that have fallen for some of these scams. They also get your data from mail theft, steal it out of your mailbox, or steal your mail out of your recycling or garbage if you haven't shredded it. There could be a skimmer attached to a gas pump, or they trick you into clicking on something and it installs spyware into your computer, and then they track your keystrokes. And a lot of scary things but these people, again, are very creative. In almost every instance of fraud I see, whether it's romance, a grandparent scam, or a lottery scam, the fraudsters collect a ton of data from their victims. And that's another place that people lose it. I call victims all the time. I ask them questions. Very victims even want to confirm that I work for the government. I sound official when I talk to them. They think I sound like a government person, so they give me the information that I'm asking for. I don't ask them for personal information, but I think they would give it to me. I've had people offer to give me their social security numbers and other things. And I think really what we should be careful about is anybody who is impersonating any business or the government, because there are government impersonators out there too who will try to get your information.
Well, I've been doing some presentations for AARP about cybersecurity, and a couple of things that we talk about in there are somewhat related, and it goes a little bit deeper into technology. Like the hackers will guess someone's password into their accounts because they use a very simple password, very easy to remember, instead of using a long or complex password. And the hackers can easily crack through that. And the other is that people unknowingly, or they're unaware the dangers of doing financial transactions on a public Wi-Fi that's not secure. Like you're in a coffee shop or you're at the airport lounge or something, and you're on your device and you're doing all kinds of activities. Well, those aren't secure Wi-Fi networks, and a person sitting next to you could be listening in and watching everything that you do. How many cases of things like those two do you come across?
You know, every one of the things that I've mentioned, I have people who have reported it to me. And it's hard because a lot of people don't know where the scammers got their information. But, you know, it's clear that they did. I mean, you know, you can go onto the dark net and, you know, Equifax was hacked. And a lot of our information is available. There are websites where you can check to see if your email has been compromised. And two of my email accounts at some point were compromised. And you're right, social media. People will go on social media. We put all kinds of things on social media, including Facebook. And, you know, if you have your email or your password is Fifi123 and your pet's Fifi and it's written all over your Facebook page, well, it's not too hard to guess that. And
Sure. Well, we've talked about how scammers use this information, but let's be very specific, if we can, about the kinds of information that the identity theft scammer is after, and so that we know what we should be protecting as much as we can. What specific data are they looking for?
Well, the number one thing that they're looking for is your social security number. That's the hardest thing to get. But, you know, other than that, they're looking for anything. Your date of birth, credit card numbers, they can use all those things. Driver's license number. You know, I get emails all the time where they say you're going to get $5 million, and all you have to do is provide all this information. And the scammers, again, will trick you into doing it. They'll provide you with a copy of their passport or their driver's license. I get people who send me those, and I go and I show them how those are bogus, and they're really just copies of some other website with the exact that same information, but they've changed the picture or, you know, maybe a signature or something. But you know, they're looking for computer passwords. They're looking for login information, passport information, all sorts of things. I had one scam victim that they transferred their scammer over to me, okay? And they told them they were changing their phone number to my phone number. And I talked to this person who they had gotten scammed with for quite a while. The scammer was trying to scam them again, but ended up to be me. And they said, you don't have to worry. You've already provided me with a whole bunch of information. They've given their mother's maiden name to the person, their date of birth. They had given their first vehicle, their driver's license, you know, all of those information. The only thing they hadn't given was social security number, and they were still asking me for the person's social security number. Yeah, we just need to make sure that we don't provide that information to anybody when we haven't verified that it's something that you know, someone official actually needs, whether it's a company or government or whomever.
Well, I've heard that in situations like the huge database compromise that Experian had a few years ago, where that kind of data was accessed by the hackers, but they didn't use that data right away. They just let it set dormant, maybe for months or even years, where they had the person's social security number, their birth date, you know, addresses, phone numbers, all of those kinds of things. And it just sat dormant for a long period of time before the scammer tried to use it. So what are some of the other things that these hackers and scammers may do with the data, besides just using it themselves to open up credit in their name or to purchase something on the credit card? What else could they do with it?
Well, you know, I mentioned to you before a couple of things. One is, you know, taking over a victim's account. Once you have certain information, and you know, you can just make a phone call to that investment firm, and as long as you have enough information, it's pretty likely that you'll be able to do some real damage in someone else's account. They can use the credit card numbers to go shopping. They can get shopping. They can order utilities or phone service in the victim's name rather than their own. And, I also mentioned that they can use your health insurance information to get health insurance benefits. I mean, it's really endless, but it depends on what information that people, the scammers have, and they can do some real damage. Or as I stated before, they can sell it to others, and they do.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I understand that there's a huge black market or market in the dark web, where once scammers get a hold of this data that is valuable and useful, that they may not use it themselves, but even if they do, they'll sell it to somebody else who will use it.
That's correct. That's exactly right. I mean, we should all be, protecting our information. That's really the key. Don't share it with anyone unless somebody needs that information. And, unfortunately, a lot of us do. And unfortunately, we'll have, the computer save our passwords or something. All those things are vulnerable to hacks. I have a zero trust policy myself, and I always encourage others to do that. So if somebody contacts you, don't believe them. Don't believe anybody. Look up the phone number yourself and verify that who the person says they are. They spoof phone numbers, so it looks like the IRS calling you, or it'll look like that official number calling you. Don't answer the questions. You call back the government agency, or you call back your financial institution and confirm with them personally, directly, that they in fact need the information that is being requested. And that's what I always do. If you can sign up for two-factor authentication, that's another thing I do. I use, complex passwords that are unique. Unfortunately, it's a ton of work because at the government, I have tons of databases that I have to log into, but I have to have unique, complex passwords, that basically we change every month. Don't let those documents lay around. If you have documents that you're going to throw in your garbage or recycle, cross-cut, shred them, because all these places are places where the people get the information. Sign up for the United Postal Service, where they have informed delivery. So if someone steals your mail, which happens in my neighborhood, I see that a few times a year, then you'll know at least what mail was headed to your house that day, so you can contact those companies and say, hey, by the way, my mail was stolen, and watch out for any sort of theft that happens, or even get a locking mailbox. Something as simple as that can help protect us.
Well, we used to hear about dumpster divers who would go into the garbage bins and sort through things that people discarded that would include information that could be used to compromise their identity. I don't know if they still do that or not. There are much more sophisticated ways to get that information today. But Marty, you've gone where I was hoping we would go, where we would get to, where we could talk about what are some of the very important things that the consumer can do to protect their personal data and privacy and avoid becoming a victim of identity theft. Are there any other suggestions, recommendations that you have for the consumer to protect their data?
Really, it's the key to not sharing it with anyone, and make sure that we need to keep very few documents anymore. We can scan it and lock it down in our computer. I know somebody who got one of those letters in the mail from their credit card company where they have those checks where you can write a check, and they just threw it out. Somebody went through their garbage. This is in Minnesota, went through their garbage and wrote a check. And it was horrendous how much time it took them to get that solved and to get that worked out. All these things take time. So again, it's doing whatever we need to protect ourselves. And I've given a whole bunch of suggestions about how to do that. And it's not sharing, and it's making sure that we don't leave that information. And it's simple as being in a coffee shop and logging on to a Wi-Fi and somebody looking over your shoulder. So it can take all different forms, the way they obtain your login and other personal information.
This has all been very interesting, very helpful about what identity theft really is, how it happens, and what impact it has on the victim. But let's talk about, if you will, what should someone do? What steps should they take if they believe they have been victimized with their identity being stolen?
Sure. If you have any accounts that are compromised, obviously call the financial institution as soon as possible to report it. I've done that in the past, and that will usually relieve you of any liability related to the account. But I have many victims do that. They'll change account numbers very fast because financial institutions understand this stuff, and that's why they have sophisticated monitoring in place to also help protect your accounts. You can also put an alert on your, contact the 3 credit bureaus, and you can put a fraud alert. If somebody steals your mail or something, you can put a fraud alert on your credit report to let creditors know that, it's some information may have been compromised. The other thing is, if you do find out that you're a victim of identity theft, go to the FTC's website, the Federal Trade Commission's website. They have a really great step-by-step process listed there for reporting and recovering from identity theft. It's fantastic, and they have all the forms you need and things like that, and they can answer all the questions. And then call local law enforcement as well to report it, because there may be other neighbors that don't understand that their mail got stolen or something like that too, and that'll put law enforcement on notice that that's happening. And finally, you can report it to the FBI. It's the Internet Crime Complaint Center with the FBI, or ic3.gov. And if you think that it's an organized crime operation, you can report the information there.
Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you for sharing that information with us, Marty. As we wrap up the program today, are there any other final messages or recommendations that you would give our viewers about identity theft and what they need to know right now?
The best thing you can do is, if you're not going to open up any new accounts, you're not going to buy a new car or something like that, you can put a freeze on your account. Go to the FTC's website. They have the 3 credit reporting bureaus information on there, and then you can go ahead and contact the three credit bureaus, and you can put a freeze. You can freeze it, unfreeze it all you want, and there's no charge for that. And then the other thing that you can do that's very simple, that I know you do, Bill, too, because you and I have talked about it, is monitor your credit, whether it's a commercial product or whether it's something free. I use free products, and I pull my credit report every year, and I check it. I pull it several times a year, and I check it to make sure that nobody's opened an account or anything like that, or there's not been any credit inquiry.
Well, those are great steps for us to follow, and very helpful things for us to know to avoid becoming a victim of ID theft, and what to do in the event that we do become a victim. Our guest on Access to Democracy today has been Marty Fleischhacker with the Department of Commerce here in Minnesota. Marty, thank you so much for your time and for the information you shared with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.